Goblin launch detected.
This video is sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc. with free weekly content and free shipping on orders over $150. You can save 5% site-wide by using the promo code MTGMudsta. I'm also sponsored by Face to Face Games, Canada's premier Magic the Gathering store. Using the promo code MTGMudsta will get you 5% off site-wide, with eligible orders getting free shipping Canada-wide. If you're looking for a direct way to help the channel, please consider joining my Patreon and becoming a member of the generic Goblin Gang. Hey gang, and welcome back. Today's game takes place once more in my studio, and we remembered to film the opening hands. Dom is playing his Boros Duke Ulder Ravenguard deck, which focuses on using Myriad to make a bunch of token copies of creatures attacking his opponents. He keeps a Battlefield Forge, Sacred Foundry, Mana Vault, Rip Apart, Solemn Simulacrum, Smothering Tithe, and Blasphemous Act. I've brought out my trusty Krenko deck, which just wants to make goblins and attack, keeping Perforos, Goblin Piledriver, Tiki Jiki, Cheering Fanatic, 2 snow-covered mountains, and a Mind Stone. Abdel has built Abel Adrian, an Inspiring Leader, and frankly I have no idea what this deck does. He keeps 2 planes, Arch of Araska, Thought Vessel, Coveted Jewel, Sword of Hearth and Home, and Justicar's Portal. Last but not least, Mathieu has built Kosei, keeping Omnath, Armory of Ios, Forest, Soul Ring, Balaged Recovery, Tangle, and Burst of Strength. Dom wins the die roll and starts us off. Dom plays a Battlefield Forge and taps it for a colorless to cast Mana Vault. I just play a tap Myriad Landscape. Abdel plays a Plains, passing after that. Matt plays a Forest and taps it for Soul Ring. He then taps that for the Armory of Iris, passing after the equipment resolves. Dom plays a Marsh Flats, and shortcuts, casting Rip Apart to blow up the Soul Ring on Matt's side. This has him taking 2, one from tapping the Forge for a red, and one from cracking the Marsh Flats to go and find a white source. I draw and play a Snow-Covered Mountain. I pay 2 mana for Mind Stone, passing. Abdel has a Plains for turn, and casts his own 2 mana Mana Rock, Thought Vessel, and passes to Matt. Matt plays a tapped Balaged Sanctuary, passing after that. Dom's turn has him playing Sacred Foundry untapped, and he takes 2. He then taps out for Duke Ulder Ravenguard, and passes to me after that. I've got another Snow-Covered Mountain as I play my land for turn, and then pay the 2 to sacrifice the landscape, going into my library to find 2 more Snow-Covered Mountains. Abdel plays a Plains for turn, and then casts Spare Supplies, which enters the battlefield tapped. He also gets to draw a card from it coming in. He then casts a Maze Mind Tome, passing after that. Matt draws, tapping 2 mana for his own copy of Thought Vessel. Dom loses 1 on his upkeep to the Vault, and then plays a Plateau. He's got enough mana for a Solemn Simulacrum, shortcutting and going to combat before finding a land. He gives the Solemn Myriad with the Duke's trigger, and swings it at me, and the Duke goes at Matt. This makes him 2 token copies of the Solemn, one that's going at each opponent that isn't being attacked by the original, and he gets to find a total of 3 basics to the field. He then exiles the copies at the end of combat and passes to me. I draw while Abdel activates his tome to scry 1. I play a Snow-Covered Mountain for turn, and then tap 4 mana for Perforos. No Krenko deck should leave home without one. I then tap 2 for a Cheering Fanatic, dealing 2 to each of my opponents as it enters with the Perforos trigger. Abdel plays an Arch of Araska as his land for turn, and then casts a Prismatic Lens. He then taps enough for his background half of his commander pairing, Inspiring Leader, and passes after that. Matt draws, but only has enough mana to cast his commander, Kosei, before passing to Dom. Dom loses another 1 to the Vault trigger, and casts an Inferno Titan in his main phase. With it entering, he deals 3 damage to me. He then gives it the Duke Myriad trigger as he moves to combat, and swings the Solemn and the Titan at me, and the Duke Ulder. He deals 2 damage with the Inferno Titan on attack trigger to the Fanatic, and 1 to my face. He then resolves a Myriad trigger, making 2 token copies of Inferno Titan, 1 going at each of his other opponents, and their enter the battlefield triggers deal 3 to their respective opponents. Matt and Abdel then take 6 from each of the unblocked Titans, plus Abdel takes some commander damage, while I take the 8 still coming at me. I untap and draw. I pay 4 mana for Mana Echoes, and then 2 mana for Goblin Cratermaker. This has me dealing 2 more to each of my opponents as it enters, and I pass after that. Abdel plays a Majoring Network, and then scries 1 with a Tome. He then casts Abel after looking at his top card, and as it enters, exiles all of his non-land permanents under Abel, making 5 1/1 tokens. He passes after that. Matt draws and plays a Forest. He pays the equip cost of the Armory of Iris onto his commander, and then goes to combat. He swings Kosei at Dom, putting a +1/+1 counter onto his commander from the Armory trigger, and deals 1 commander damage. He passes after that. Dom loses 1 to his Vault trigger, and draws. He casts a Terror of the Peaks, and then goes to combat. He gives the Inferno Titan the Myriad trigger once more, and swings the real one at me. The real Inferno Titan trigger takes out my Cratermaker, and pings me in the face, and Dom gets 2 Inferno Titan tokens entering from Myriad, which means he has 2 triggers of 3 that he can divide up, and 2 triggers of 6 damage from the Terror of the Peaks. He ends up using all of those triggers to just take out Abdel with extreme prejudice. Once that's done, and before moving to blocks, Matt resolves a Tangle to fog combat, and keep Dom's creatures tapped for another turn. Dom then passes to me. I draw for turn, and cast an Impact Tremors in my main phase. And then a Hobgoblin Bandit Lord, who enters and triggers my enchantments, dealing 3 to each of my opponents. With nothing else, I just pass to Matt. Matt draws, and taps 3 for a Treefolk Umbra, enchanting it onto Kosei. He swings it at Dom, and adds another counter to it from the Armory, and then deals its toughness as damage, for a total of 9. Because Kosei is enchanted, equipped, and has a counter on it, it also deals 9 damage to me, and draws Matt 9 cards. While Matt's drawing, Dom decides to cast an Enlightened Tutor. And Matt then plays a Reliquary Tower as his land for turn. He casts Explore, drawing a card, and playing out a second land for turn, a Forest. We then see Matt cast Commander's Plate, and Dom reveals an Anointed Procession to put on top of his library. Dom takes 1 from his vault, and keeps his creatures tapped that had attacked last turn. He casts the Procession, and then moves to combat. He gives the Terror of the Myriad trigger from his commander, and swings the original at me, and makes a token copy tapped and attacking, and gets a second one thanks to the Procession. He also gets a few triggers from the Terror seeing each other entering, and he deals 10 to Matt, and uses the last one to take out my Hobgoblin. Once more before damage though, Matt discards a Forest from hand to cast Snag for free. This fogs all of combat from all unblocked creatures, and with nothing else, Dom passes. I draw and play Goblin Piledriver, dealing 3 to my opponents as it enters. I then bring out Krenko, dealing 3 more. I make some colorless mana for the Mana Echoes, and even have a 1000-year elixir in hand that I could cast with it, but the issue is that Matt will die, and I can't deal with Dom right now by myself, so I just passed after that. Matt draws and is feeling pretty good, playing a Roadside Reliquary as his land for turn. He equips Kosei with the Commander's Plate, giving it +3/+3 and protection from all colors but green. That's enough damage to take Dom out, but Matt will likely die to me if he can't gain some life. He's kind of in an awkward position, so he casts Bear Umbra onto Kosei as well. Moving to combat, he goes at Dom, getting to untap his lands thanks to Bear Umbra, and then dealing 15, which is more than enough to take Dom out. It also drops me to 3 life. He gets to draw 15 cards as well, and one of them is a Bond of Flourishing. This lets him look at his top 3 and keep 1 permanent to put to hand, but more importantly, gain 3 precious life, which at this point doubles his life total. The permanent he keeps is a Rune of Might, and Matt then casts a Gaia's Touch, and plays another forest for turn. He then enchants Kosei with the Rune of Might, drawing a card as it enters. Sadly, he's got no other life gain in his massive hand of cards, and just has to pass to me. During my upkeep, Matt uses Beast Within to take out Krenko, and I then draw for turn. In my main phase, I tap enough for Kiki Jiki, and with the Goblin entering, I deal 3 to Matt, and then just need to tap him to make a token copy of the Pile Driver, dealing the final 3 damage I need to win the game. Game review time. So if you can't tell between when I did the audio for this game and now when I'm doing this recap, my voice is gone because I got sick. I'll keep this recap pretty brief. Krenko plus Impact Tremors plus Perforos usually ends up having me win, unless they're able to stop ETB triggers from happening or have a way to deal with my enchantments. I was actually pretty impressed with Kosei considering how far behind Matt was, but I guess that happens when you draw 9 cards every combat step. I think I said Abel when it's actually Abdel, and I'm sorry for that, Jabel. I believe his deck is built around the fact that he basically casts his commander, exiles a bunch of stuff, makes a bunch of 1/1 soldiers, and then casts his other commander to pump them up. I'd imagine there's probably a lot of other white anthem effects that work for tokens, probably like Elish Norn and Intangible Virtue. Dom's Duke deck was pretty spicy, and we filmed a second game with it. Unfortunately though, we made a bit of a mistake, and it's something you need to keep track of. Myriad Exiles, it doesn't sacrifice. This can be very relevant for some creatures that have undying effects, like Cavalier of Flame. This video wouldn't be possible without the help from my sponsors, Cool Stuff Inc., Multizone, Original Magic Art, and Alter Sleeves. But it definitely wouldn't be possible without the help from you, the viewers, and my patrons. So I just want to say thank you for watching, and to remember, friends are just opponents you haven't eliminated yet.